Begin the current Daf Mesechtes Nedarim Daf Mem Dalid. We begin on the bottom of Mem Gimel Beis, 3 lines up from the bottom of the Amud. The Gemara is going to bring in a brisa, and the Gemara is going to attempt to tie this to the machlekes we had mentioned in our previous Mishnah regarding the last idea mentioned. The Mishnah was talking about a muda no mechaveroi, and we had a machlekes. What do you do if the guy that you took a neder no has nothing to eat? So we had different options. You go to the store, you put on give it to someone else. The last option was, there's no one with you. So the Tanakh says, okay, put on the rock or on the wall. You say, okay, it's a hefker. Whoever wants can take it, and that guy can come and eat it. Yossi said, no, that's asa. And the Gemara had explained different versions of what that problem was. Our Gemara is going to go with one of those approaches and try to show how to explain the brisa that we're going to bring in the Gemara. Some of the discussed in today's daf are specifically Rabbi Yochanan's understanding of the machlekes Rabbi Yossi Chacham from the previous daf, which the Gemara actually had originally said, and the Gemara actually fell off of that. Our Gemara is going to start off with that assumption that Rabbi Yossi, who said that you're not allowed to put on the rock and let the guy take it from the rock, is because he held hefker as kamatana. And therefore, because the adli asali rishus zeichel liyotz mishus hamafka, he held that it's still in your rishus, even when you're mafka like a matana. It's only that guy's until that when the guy gets it. Until he gets it, it's still yours. So you can't put on the rock and quote unquote be mafka because it's still coming from your rishus to the other guy's rishus. It's like no hefka lav kamatana. You cannot back out once you're mafka. It's already not yours, even though no one ever got it. And therefore, since it's not for the mishusei, so therefore that would be a good option for the mudhana, and that's how he explained the machlekes in our previous mishnah. Some important terms, the concepts in today's daf are hefka potem and meiser. When you mafka something, it's exempt from meiser because then it's only that even the levi have rishus and hefker, and therefore you don't have an obligation to give meiser from hefker. And emafrishim and achiv ala potem and apot al achiv. You cannot separate trumas and meises from that which is obligated in it for that which is pater, and so to the other way around, you can't take from someone that's pater for someone that's chayiv, as we'll see as how that relates in today's daf. So begin the current daf. Daf Mem Gimel Beis, 3 lines up from the bottom of the Yamid. A pretty obtuse brisa. It's hard to know what the brisa is saying, and we're going to take this slowly. Tanya learn the brisa. Hamafker esadeyu. Someone takes his field and he makes it hefker. He makes it ownerless. So the halacha is as follows: Kol shleishis yamim, for the next 3 days, yochel lachzeboy, he could back out. Now mikam ve'eloch, after 3 days, ein yochel lachzeboy, he cannot back out. That is the ratio of the brisa. As getin taba memdalim and aleph. Amar, let's say he says, tehei sadazu mufkeres liyemechad. Let this field be hefker for 1 day, Shabbos achas for 1 week, l'chodesh echad for 1 month, l'shon echad for 1 year, l'shvu achas for 1 shemitah cycle. He's saying a certain amount of time. So here the halacha is as follows: Actually, zachaba, until no one else went and took the rights of this hefker field. Bein hu bein acher, whether it was him or someone else. But if no one else yet was zeich in it, yochel achzabai. So then the original owner could retract and he could back out, and it goes back to being his field. But once there was someone who got the rights in this field that he had been mafker, bein hu bein acher, whether him or someone else, then eino yochel achzabai. Then they cannot back out already. It's already too late. Someone already got the rights in that field. That's the ratio. That's the seifa of the brisa. So the Ran is here on the bottom of Gimel Beis. The Ran explains like this. He says, from the fact that in the seifa of the brisa, the Tana differentiates, and the Tana says, if let's say the guy says that this field should be hefker for 1 day, for 1 year, whatever it was, etc. And the Tana differentiates between zacha and loy zacha, if someone yet got the rights in it or not. Because what were the words of the brisa? The words of the brisa were actually zacha ba, until someone didn't yet get rights in it. So yochel achzabai. So then he could back out. He said, but zacha ba, when someone was for zeich in it, then he could not back out. That's how the seifa says it, differentiating between zacha ba or not. Whereas in the bereisha of the brisa doesn't make such any differentiation. It only says it depends if you could back out, if it's within 3 days or after 3 days. That's a discrepancy the Ram points out between the Reisha It doesn't say anything about zachaba loy zachaba. It's just dependent on 3 days, and between that of the seifa. So he says, obviously, the way you have to understand the reisha is as follows. For the first 3 days, he could back out of what he made as hefker, even if someone else was zeichen hefker, right? My field's hefker, and so 5 hours later, some guys go, yeah, hefker field. You guys wants to be zeichen it. He could still be. Even if someone comes and backs out before he even if someone is zeichen it before he backed out, that guy's not koina. Why would that be? So the Gemara is going to explain later on that the Ramoyin, there were deceptive people that would make it hefker and then go back and be zeich on it. Why? Because there's a halacha that hefker is potter from ma'aser. Hefker is its own list. It's the Levim has a chelik just like you. You don't have to give the Levim, so it's potter from ma'aser. So what the Ramoyin, these deceivers, would do, they would be mafker their fields to exempt it from the halachas of ma'aser, but their intention when they would be mafker was to go right back and be zeich in it. Comes out that they were not mafkrid, but just to be deceptive, to get out of giving ma'aser. So therefore, Chazal had to say that if people are zeiche in this hefker field up until a period of 3 days, they're not like they were zeiche from hefker, because it was not real hefker. Also, they had to say that even if it's someone else that's zeiche in it, he's not going to make kain it, and the mafker could back out as long as it's within 3 days. Now, as the Ram points out, although regarding someone else, there shouldn't be any concern for Ramai, because what do you mean Ramai? Saving Meiser? What do you mean the guy, not only did he lost his whole field, because someone else was zeich in it already. Even so, it's not true. If we wouldn't have made this halacha that someone else cannot be zeich in it up until 3 days, we would not have been able to maintain the other takana that the guy is not going to be potter from Meiser. Because if these Ramoyin see that when someone else beats him to it, the guy's koine it, he's not going to listen to the chachamim that say that the other guy shouldn't be koine within 3 days, because they're going to say, wait a second, just like someone else is zeicha from hefker, so we're also zeicha from hefker. So what do you mean? You're telling me that that if it's within 3 days that I back out, I'm not going to be potter from Meiser? Why not? I was mafkrid, just like someone else could be zeich in it. I could also quote unquote be zeich in it. So they had to make that another guy cannot be zeich in it.
Is it necessary in duration that they could disagree with each other? In other words, perhaps the Sefer is just going into more detail. The Reish is thought out saying that.
Right. So in the Chadami, so that's what the the round's coming to explain now. He's saying you have to say a certain criterion to explain the two cases, because you see that the Reish is not differentiating of zachaba or zachaba. So he's saying you're right. Even if zachaba achar, it would be different than the Seifa. We're going to ask in a moment that it seems to be like two different Tanoim. But he's saying, yeah, the Reish is not differentiating between Zachar, because even if someone else is Zachar Ba'achar, within 3 days, you could still be Chayzer. Why? Because, as we're saying, we wouldn't be able to institute our takana of still requiring him to do Meiser if we didn't have this idea of not letting someone else be Zeicha. Because he's going to say, what do you mean? If he could be Zeicha, that means it obviously was Hefker. So no, even someone else cannot be Zeicha. And another reason, says the Ran, is because since these Ramoin, their custom in the deception was for 3 days, so it's not really verified yet even that it is even Hefker. Because you have to be concerned that maybe they're not really intentionally being mafkid, just as a deceptive tactic. And therefore it's not really Hefker. So therefore it is appropriate to say that even someone else is Zeicha, that the mafkid could be Chayzer, he could retract, because he didn't yet really conclude being mafkid. But Mekam ve'elach, after 3 days, then the Brisa said, Ein yochel, so we cannot back out. That is, even if someone else is not Zeicha, he has no rights to back out, because after 3 days, we don't have to be concerned anymore for a guy who is deceptive, because whoever was doing the whole Efkeris just as a trick, so generally the owners don't wait so long, more than 3 days, to go and reclaim it back again. Oh, wait a day, this now, whatever. Say, I'm Zeicha in it, right? But more than 3 days, it sounds like he probably would be doing a real hefker. So that explains the Ran, is why the Reisha doesn't differentiate like the Seifa does, because the Reisha is, whether a guy is Zeichen it or not, before 3 or after 3, up until 3 days, he could back out. We don't say it's not like a real hefker. After 3 days, he can't back out. Now, the Gemara says, and it seems like Reish Rabbanan and Seif is Rabbi Yasi. Why does it sound like the Reish is Rabbanan and Seif is Rabbi Yasi? So what's important to recall is that the Gemara assumes right now that the interpretation of Rabbi Yasi, that it said in our Mishnah on Daf Mem Gimel, that it's not a good option to mafkir your snack bag on the rock for the one that's mudr hana from you. Like Rabbi Yechon explained, what's the reason? He had explained, again, the Gemara fell off of his interpretation. The Gemara had asked on him, and the Gemara had answered with something else. But our Gemara is starting off with that premise, like Rabbi Yechon, that he held hefk is like matana. What does it mean, hefk is like matana? That up until it comes to the rishus of someone else who's zoich in it, it has not yet left the rishus of the mafker. So that's how the Gemara is understanding right now. The machlokes Rabbi Yossi and the Chacham in the Mishnah is based on that principle. Rabbi Yossi holds it's like a matana. So meaning up until, even though you quote unquote mafker, it's still coming from you because it hasn't left yet your rishus. For the Chachamim, no, it's already left your rishus, and therefore it is a good option. So therefore, says the Gemara, it seems like our brisa, the reisha is like the Chacham, like the Rabbanan, and the seif is like Rabbi Yossi. And then if you would read it like that, the brisa would make sense. Why is it? So let's explain. The reisha had said that for the first 3 days, the one who's mafka could back out. Why? Like we explained, because of the Ramoin, because the guy's not really mafkid. It's just a deceptive tactic to be able to not have to give meiser on his stuff. So that makes sense according to everyone, that even though really when you're mafkir, it's out of your rishus. It's not really out of your rishus yet, because you're just being deceptive. After 3 days, you cannot back out. That's me'ikra din. Why? Because Rabbanan hold that when you're mafkir something, the moment you're mafkir it already at that moment left your rishus. You can't back out. There's no backing out. You already released it. It's not yours. You have no ownership on this anymore. There's no backing out. Okay, that makes sense. It's like the Rabbanan. The seif of the brisa that said that if a guy says, let this field be hefker for 1 day, for 1 week, for 1 year, whatever it is. So in such a situation, there's no concern for Amoin. Why is there no concern for Amoin over there, for someone being deceptive? Because if his intention when he was being mafkert was to back out and to then quickly snatch it back and say, I got it from Hefker, I don't have to give no meiser, why would he be mafkert for a set amount of time? Be mafkert for a totality. Because anyways, your intention is to go right back and be zeich in it. So it hasn't really left. Meaning, so what would be the point of doing it for a day, for a week, for a month? If you're saying that, you're saying for a limited time, as if you plan it going for that. You plan on going be zeich anyways right back. Obviously, for that time that he's mafkert, he really did conclude to do it for that without any deception at all. It's important again, a lot of these variables to just understand the cases when you're doing it for that amount of time. So there's no concern about harama. If you're doing real harama, so you just say hefker, and then you just go back a day. Why would you say for a week? Well, what are you saying that for? Obviously, you're intending to really be mafkrit for a week. Why else would you say that? Now we can understand why the Brisa said mishazacha ba, when someone's zoich, and like we said, bein hu bein achar, whether him or someone else. We said in the Brisa in the that you cannot back out. Says the Ran, that part also works out even according to the Rabbanan. Because, of course, why should you be able to back out? You did a genuine hefker. And you do it for a limited amount of time, that's a real hefker. There's no deception over there, because if you're being deceptive, you wouldn't say for a day or week. You just say a regular hefker. Okay, but what's the question that we have in the Gemara is the next part. The Brisa said, or the first part. The Brisa said, in the Seifa, in this case, if we did it for a limited amount of time, there's 2 cases, meaning 2 parts. Whether up until someone was zeicha and after someone was zeicha. The part about it when someone was zeicha, we said, okay, that makes sense according to everyone. Someone was already zeicha. As gemachte echte hefke, because why is there no ramois? Because the ramai wouldn't do it for a limited amount of time. So that makes sense. But the question was regarding achalai zachaba, if no one was zeicha in it yet. We said bein hu bein achar. Okay, so then what did the Brisa say? Yochalach zabai. Then you can back out. Ooh, that's like a biasi. Because Rabbi Yossi holds up until it doesn't come to the rishus of someone who's zeich in it, it hasn't yet left the rishus of the mafker, because according to the Rabbanan, they say the moment you mafker something, you left your rishus. How could you go back and be zeichen it? So the Ran just points out that in a Chanami, that when we said according to Rabbi Yosi, this halacha of actually zachaba, which we're saying really only makes sense according to Rabbi Yosi, that whether him or someone else, no one was zeichen it yet, he could be chayzer in this. So the truth is, it's lav dafka when you mafker for a certain amount of time, like the case of the seifa. Because even if you mafker it forever, which is the case of the reisha, according to Rabbi Yosi, you're also allowed to be chayzer there also up until someone was zeicha, because according to Rabbi Yosi, hefker never leaves your rishus. So on that says the Ran, yes, but because of the halacha of zachaba, right? There's always two halves to the cases: achalei zachaba and zachaba. Because of the halacha of zachaba, he cannot back out. Because regarding that, you don't say it's the same thing when hefker is for a certain amount of time, with hefker that's forever, as we write. And we had to say the case of for one day, for one Shabbos, because of the halacha of zachaba. So therefore, we kept that uniformity of that same case of achaloi zachaba. But you're right. According to Rabbi Yosi, it wouldn't make a difference regarding the limited time of the seifa, regarding the generic one, because up until someone's zeichen, it's still yours, according to the way Rabbi Yochanan qualified the machlekes Rabbi Shloimy on the previous daf. And that's the premise that we're going with now, with explaining this brisa based on the machlekes Rabbi Shloimy. So, and that's where the Gemara's question is. If you're going to say that from when someone is zeichen it, you're saying that ein yochel lachzer boy, you cannot back out. In other words, that it's going to be hefker, even according to Rabbi Yosi, and it's going to be potter from meiser. So how does this make sense? But since you're saying according to Rabbi Yosi that when you mafker something up until it comes to the rishus of the zeicha, it hasn't left yet the rishus of the mafker. So it comes out that when he subsequently is zeichen it, this is a question Ran asks. He's zeichen from himself and not from hefker, because it never left his rishus. So why are you saying that mishazachaba? The Ran's asking a question. In the seifa of the seifa, we said mishazachaba. Oh, when someone's zeichen it, bein hu bein acher, then any yochel, but then he cannot back out. It was hefker, and then it'll be part of a ma'isa. What do you mean? If he is the one bein hu, if he's zeichen from himself, aren't you going with Rabbi Yosi now in the seifa? And Rabbi Yosi holds that hefker never left your rishus. So how does that help mishazachaba hu to say that any yochel achzaboy? And it says the Ran, interesting svara. It says possibly you could say that although Rabbi Yosi holds it up until it comes to the rishus of a zeicha, it hasn't yet left the rishus of a mafker. Even so, just like if someone else would be zeichen it, he'd be zeicha from hefker and not from matana. Since it'd be possible for someone else to be zeichen it, so too over here, when he himself goes back and he's zeichen it, and he does it explicitly that he's doing it from hefker and not stam. So just like that, it shouldn't be dependent on chazara. So to himself, he could be zeicher from hefker, because since he has not yet backed out, and technically someone else could have been zeicher, so therefore says the Ran, malihu maliyach. What's him or someone else? He also could quote unquote be zeicher from the hefker. And if that's the case, so that wasn't him backing out, and it was from hefker, and therefore it's hefker, and therefore even though he gets it, lamaisa, it's going to be potter from maisa. Okay, that's just a question that the Ran addresses regarding the case. But one thing is, therefore, comes out that the reisha is like the Rabbanan. As we said, why is the reisha like the Rabbanan? Because we said that all 3 days you could back out, but that sounds like the Rabbanan. I mean, after 3 days you cannot back out. What do you mean you can't back out? Why can't you back out after 3 days? It never left your rishus, according to Rabbi Yosi. Obviously, it's like Rabbanan that no, the moment you made a hefker, the first 3 days, that's because of a ramai. So okay, we make that takana. But after 3 days, it's going to be considered as hefker. You can't back out anymore. He could be zeicha, but it's according to Rabbi Yosi, it was coming from his own. Mishazachabahu, that in your chalach zaboy. I hear. The Gemara is assuming that this is like the Rabbanan, that and how is this different than the case of Rabbi Yossi over here? Shilas, is this regarding a limited amount of time? Is this regarding this case? Yeah, you have to think about it. How is that different? But in the Pashtus, Rabbi Yossi is the Reisha seems like the Rabbanan, and then that's what the Gemara's question is, that the Reisha is like the Rabbanan, because the Reisha says, I mean, this is the way the Ran explains it, says that by Medina. That's like the Rabbanan, he says, Hefker me'idin the afker de mafker. So nothing lemeshusa. Whereas according to Rabbi Yossi, hasn't left your. I think the way the Ran is bavarning that shaila is depends if you're explicitly doing something to make it like a tyrus hefker, and then you have to know exactly how to explain that point. But the pashtus is that after 3 days, when you mafker something, the fact that you're saying in yochal sounds like the Rabbanan because it already left your shos, whereas the seifa is like Rabbi Yossi. Why is the seifa like Rabbi Yossi? So he said that because on the ad shaloi zachaba, we said that he could be chayzer. According to Rabbanan, you shouldn't be able to be chayzer, right? You shouldn't be able to be chayzer because the moment you mafke something, it's hefker already, so you can't back out. No, he said you could back out. If no one else was zeicha in it yet, you could be chayzer. It's like it was never hefker. That's like only like Rabbi Yossi because never left your rishus. It's not like Rabbanan. According to Rabbanan, they already left your rishus. So that seifa sounds like Rabbi Yossi.
Question on the meiser, fruits left in the field that are after. Why they putter from?
Oh, so we'll discuss. We're going to bring the source. I think shortly. Yeah, so I think we're gonna bring that source at the end, towards the end, why Meiser and versus all the other matnas and im. It's exeris hakasib, but and therefore, I'm saying, but what does that have to do if let's? Okay, sometimes Meisers. Right. Okay. Sometimes you could give matnas in the meiser from the field. Also depends what kufa.
So obviously he's making a tree before he comes to be field myself. Then this is not good. He has to first have the possibility of being the field myself.
I hear. Okay. We'll see. I mean, the main halacha is learned out from exeris hakasib. So the Gemara is asking and saying, okay, if you say the reish is like the Rabban, the Sefer is like Rabbi Yossi, so the brisa makes sense. But that's a wonder. How are you going to make a brisa according to two different Tanoim? That's the Gemara's question of reish Rabban and Sefer Rabbi Yossi. Again, the basic idea we're saying is that the reish is like the Rabbanan because of the halacha of Mekam ve'elach in Yochalav Zabai. That sounds like B'neraisa, it's Hefker. That's like the Rabbanan. And the Seifa, that sounds like Rabbi Yossi, because again, we're saying on the halacha of Achlei Zachaba, Beinhu Beinacha, Yochalav Zabai, that's like Rabbi Yossi, says B'neraisa, Hefker, Yochalav Zabai, according to Chachamim, you wouldn't be able to back out. So how do we resolve this brisa? So we have two different approaches how to try to say that it's all like one Tana and not like two different Tanoim. Amma Ula. It says Seifa Nam Rabbanahi. The Sefer is also Rabbanan. It's not only like Rabbi Yossi, so the whole brayso could be like Rabbanan. So, the question is, and this is what we had mentioned, Amai Achalei Zachaba, why is it that you said up until that anyone Zaycha? I mean, again, the case of the Sefer was when you said it's a limited time hefker. For a day, for a week, for a month. Again, there's no halacha of Ramai over there. So it definitely is a genuine hefker. So we said that, okay, once someone is Zaycha, that made sense according to everyone. That okay, like someone's zeicha, it's not coming from hefker. I mean, it's coming from hefker, so it's going to be hefker. But actually, zachaba, we said beinhu beinacha. If no one else was zeicha, whether him or someone else, yachal he could back out. He could back out. According to Rabban, you can't back out. Backing out means to say like it was never hefker in the first place. According to Chacham, the moment you're hefker, mafker something, it's hefker. It left your domain. It was not continuously in your rishus. So how could you be chayzer? Says the Gemara, Shani, Shana, V'Shavua, making it for a limited amount of time, for a year, for a Shemitah cycle, Deloi Shchichi. That's not common. In other words, not common that a person would be mafker his field for like a limited amount of time. And since he changed, so we evaluate according to his intention that since he didn't want to be mafker something forever, so he's still connected to it. That means to say he's still connected even for the moments that he was mafker it. He doesn't want that it should totally remove from his rishus until someone else is zeich in it. So therefore the Rabbanan would hold a hefker that's for a limited amount of time. They would hold the same way Rabbi Yossi holds by an eternal hefker. So the sefer would work even according to Rabbanan the way we had explained it according to Rabbi Yossi. Because when you mafker something for a period amount of time, the Chacham don't disagree, and they hold that yes, it's never left his rishus, and that's a nice svar. Why? Because you're doing it for a limited amount of time. Why don't limited time? Because you really want it. So okay, someone comes the next week, for that I'll make it hefker. Someone comes, I'll take it. But that means to say in that week I'm still holding on to it. So therefore the Rabban would agree that you could be chayzer. So therefore the Brisa could be totally like the Rabbanim. That's one approach. However, Rish Lakish, he says a different approach. He says no. Mid the sefer Rabbi Yossi, from the fact that the sefer is like Rabbi Yossi, as we had explained, because only he holds that you could be chayzer. Reisha nam Rabbi Yossi. The Reisha is also like Rabbi Yossi. Now the question we had asked was, if that's the case, we wanted to know after 3 days, why is it that you cannot be chayzer? We said that makes sense according to the Chacham, you can't be chayzer, because according to them, it's hefker. There's no chazara. You could try to be kind of, but there's no chazara. So says the Gemara, V'reisha hainu time. I'll explain to you the reason of the Reisha. Is dulolish takeach toiras hefker, that we should not forget the laws of hefker. In other words, the truth is you're right. Mekar din according to Rabbi Yossi, even after 3 days, of course you could be chayzer. Why not? Until someone else is zeich in it, it never left your rishus. But the reason why is because if we're going to say that, we're going to come to say that even if he's not chayzer, even if he doesn't back out, and someone else is zeich in it, we're going to say that that person is not getting it from hefker. Why? Because since before he's zeich in it, the mafker could be chayzer in it. Wait a second, he could be chayzer. Obviously, it's still in his rishus, right? How could you back out? How could you make like it was never hefker? Obviously, because it's like still in your rishus.
Where are you getting it from? It's not hefker.
I'll explain in a second, right? But it comes out that this guy's not really getting it from hefker, rather he's getting a gift. Can't say hefker because it was hefker. Then how could the original owner have backed out and made it like it was never hefker? So that's why. So people are going to think that it's still chayv meiser, because a gift is chayv meiser. It's never hefker, because you see the guy for 10 weeks he was just able to go back and said, "Oh, no one took it. It's his man's," and it's going to be chayv because like it was never hefker. So people are going to think, oh, if that's the case, that means if I got it from him, that's also not hefker, because it was always his. It must be a gift. And what's the problem then if they think it's chayv meiser? They're going to come to take meiser from those produce onto something else, and it's or from someone, let's say from somewhere else on it. That would be min achiv ala pater, or from it on someone else. That would be from pater ala chiv, meaning it's really pater for meiser, but they're not going to realize. They're going to think it's the same as his regular produce, and therefore they instituted that after 3 days you cannot back out, so that rabbinically it should be like hefker, because if we don't do that, people are going to think that it's not really hefker at all. And you're going to run into the problem of menapot alachiv and the mechiv alapat. So really, you could say that the reish is also like Rabbi Yossi. And even though really technically he should be able to back out even after 3 days, no, it was masakin not to, the people realize, hey buddy, this is real hefker. Okay. Says the Gemara, if that's the case, so then I don't understand. Then even from day one, it should be hefker. In other words, we should have instituted that even day one, it should be hefker for that reason itself. That people should know that it's really hefker, and therefore you can't back out. What's the difference between within 3 days or after 3 days? Omar Rabba says, we're talking about because of the deceivers, the mafkidin v'hadrin b'haim, because they're mafker and then they retract. In other words, and this is the round on Beis, like in the middle, he's saying that even from the beginning, they're not really mafkrit. They only do it because they want to, take it back. It comes out really the hefker is not a real hefker. It's just being deceptive. So therefore, for the first 3 days, the Rabbanan maintained the status of this field on its biblical status, which is, according to Rabbi Yossi, biblically, it's still in his rishos, and therefore he could back out. Why did they keep it on that? Because the truth is, because he really wasn't mafkrit. He's just being deceptive. But after 3 days, where there really is no such a concern, as we explained previously, because a guy is being deceptive, he's not going to wait 3 days. He's going to take it back a day later, 2 days later. After 3 days, it probably is really being mafkrit. So then, therefore, then they didn't keep it on its biblical status, and then they actually did make it rabbinically like it's hefker. And the Chanami, that this says the Ran, this reasoning of Nedarim Daf, that even in the beginning of the sugya, when we had explained, starting off this discussion, we said, Reish Rabbanan v'Seif Rabbi Yossi. You needed to know this concept of Ramayan, as we had explained previously, because there's no way of understanding the brisa to even translate it. There's no way of translating it before 3 days and after 3 days. What did I take? What was I doing? Anything? And really, we knew this premise. It's just because now the Gemara is taking a deeper dive, analyzing the Reisha, because you want to tell me that it could even be like Rabbi Yossi. So now we're coming to be explicit for this reasoning, but en Chanami, just like you needed for Rabbi Yossi to say that why we're going to maintain it for the biblical status of it being hefker, meaning that it's not going to be hefker, meaning according to Rabbi Yossi, it's still in his rishus. So we also needed for Rabbanan the opposite, to exclude it from its biblical law, and actually to be misakin that within 3 days it's not going to be hefker because Ramayan. There's a lot of these stuff. According to Rabbanan, biblically it's not his the moment he's mafkaret. So for the Rabbanan, you need to know why within 3 days, and for basically you need to know why after 3 days. For opposite angles, we were misakin that within 3 days he could back out, and after 3 days he cannot back out. Where according to Rabbi, you have to explain, wait a second, why after 3 days can he not back out? What do you mean? Biblically it's still his. Yeah, but we said that we wanted because of people not to forget the laws of Hefker. So because of that, we instituted that after 3 days we're going to make it that you cannot back out. So people know it's echte Hefker. So that it's going to be pater from Meiser. Well then why within 3 days then are you also not making it that he cannot back out? No, because that's Memneharamoyin. That's because they're not really being mafkrid. So therefore it's not really hefker, so we'll maintain it on the biblical status of not leaving his rishus according to Rabbi Yossi. Now that idea we needed for the Rabbanan also when we start off this sugya of Reish Rabbanan. We needed to, because what's before 3 days, what's after 3 days? According to Rabbanan, the moment your mafkrid already left your rishus, of course you can't be chayzer. Why up to 3 days could you be chayzer? Never mind, because he's not really being mafkrid. And therefore, of course you could back out. Go back out because you weren't never mafkrid in the first place. So that concept we needed in the beginning of the sugya, we just didn't say it. But now that we're doubling down on it, therefore we become explicit regarding it. But now the Gemara asks the following question. The Gemara is going on the words of Mikan ve'elach. We had said in the Reisha that after 3 days, ein yochel lachzor, you can't back out. On that, the Gemara is asking and saying, okay, me'ikar adin, according to Rabbi Yossi, the truth is you could back out, and it's not hefker, because like Rabbi Yossi's shita is that it never left your rishus when you mafka something until someone else is zeichen it. But still, you tell me the Rabbanu were misakin that it should be hefker. Moreover, most definitely, it's going to be chayiv in meiser. Why? Because as the Gemara asks, avol deraisa, because biblically, lo have a hefker. Noch did I take after 3 days? This is it's not real hefker because it's still in your rishus until someone's zeich in it. So as you continue to Amud Beis, so the Gemara asks that although the truth is, and the Ram points this out, that the Chacham could exempt this guy's field from Meiser because of the halachic principle of Hefker Bez and Hefker. Even so, the Chacham is not going to be lenient and pater him from Meiser, what he would be biblically chayiv, because remember, we're going like Rabbi Yossi. And according to Rabbi Yossi, it never left his rishus until someone else is zeich in it. So if that's the case, ask the Gemara, you have to be concerned. The dima osil is surei min achiv ala pater. He might come to take meiser from someone that's obligated on someone that's pater. Why? Because this guy who's zeich in this guy's field after 3 days, and again, there's so many like intricacies of svar over here, interlaced in the words of the Ran, but it's necessary to understand the simple understanding. This guy was zeich in it. That he says most definitely, since the Chacham gave me the rights and what they gave me the rights, that I get to be zeich in it, most definitely it was full-fledged hefker. Right? How else am I getting this after 3 days? Now, when this other guy backs out, me'ikra din, it's nothing. Because how could he back out? It was hefker. Now, so why are they obligating me in meiser? That's the question this guy is asking himself. He says, wait a second, I'm able to take this field because it's hefker. So then why am I being obligated in meiser? Hefker is pater from meiser. Oh, must be rabbinically because of a gezerah, either the Ugir says haramoyin or harayin, because of those who see that they're going to hear that of his retraction, and they're going to think that it's a retraction, but the truth is, it's nothing. Because if it would be the case, how could I be zeicha in what he was being mafker? So they're going to think that the truth is, it's really hefker, and it's really pater from ma'isa. And why am I obligated to give ma'isa? Okay, rabbinically, because of like it looks like as if it's really not hefker. The problem is then he's going to come to take meiser from this thing that he thinks that's really pater on something else that is me'ikra din pater. For example, let's say wheat that grew in a pot that has no holes, which he thinks that they're both rabbinic, and it's not the case. Why? Because what this guy was zeicha is biblically obligated. Why? Because since the backing out of the one who's mafker is effective me'ikra din, because like we're going like Rabbi Yossi, that me'ikra din, it's still his, even after he's mafker. So it comes out that this guy's not really being zeicha from hefker, rather it's a rabbinic injunction, even without hefker, that we don't want to forget certain halachas, so we make it like as if it's hefker.
Why don't they just make it say that you can't come after a field with pears? Because of the halachas of Shema.
Good question.
What if somebody doesn't want it? He wants to be mafker?
True, but you can make the zahir that you shouldn't do it because of true.
So the Gemara is going to have a different type of approach like yours, not as global as not being able to mafker the whole field. We're going to have some way of like a gezerah to contain this problem. That's huge because you're taking something that's obligated and something that's pater, and they can't, because it can't help, it can't fix it, you can't remedy it. If it's chayiv, if you're taking from the chayiv al pater, that chayiv that you're taking on the pater, that's not truma, that's actually gonna be like tevel. You're taking this and you're saying, okay, I'm gonna give it to the kohen. That's not truma, that's tevel. Because it's trying to be truma for something that's pater. Truma is only effective if it's being masakin tevel.
So the chiyuv.
Yeah, that chiyuv. No, because that's what it can't. It has to be the truma is like taking over one. Essentially, that's what you're doing. Meaning, when you're taking from a bucket of produce and you take one thing and you give it as truma, that thing that you're giving is being fixed by becoming truma. But if you're taking it for something else that's pater, no, it's for something that's pater. You're taking from a certain produce and you're taking it for something that's pater. You can't do that. So when you're going to take meiser from these peiros on those that are in the bucket that doesn't have a hole, on that pot, meaning that's only rabbinically obligated because it doesn't grow straight from the ground, that's taking meiser minachiv ala pater. And so too says the Gemara, umina pat alachiv. You can run into the same problem the other way around. You might take from the peiros of the atzis she'ein akav on this one, And that's problematic. So essentially the Gemara is saying that if you're telling me this halacha of within 3 days versus after 3 days, that we made these drabanan, that because Ramon, we keep it on the din deraisa so that it's going to be like it's not hefker, and after 3 days we're going to make it like it is hefker because we don't want people to forget the laws of hefker. The problem is, but biblically, it's not really hefker. You tell me after 3 days you're making like it is hefker because lo yishtakech teres hefker, but biblically it's not hefker, right? Because we're going like Rabbi Yossi, who says it's still his. And the problem is, if that's the case, the guy's going to think it is the Rabbanan. And then he's going to be separating from this, which is really biblically chayiv, because it's biblically not hefker, on something else that he thinks is also rabbinic. But biblically, that's pater. And that's a problem. So says the Gemara, no problem. Damrinle, we tell him, ki masarta, when you're going to take meiser from this field that you were zeichen, asar minei ubei. In other words, don't take meiser from it on someone else or from someone else on it. Take it from inside itself, so that its status will not be confused with anything else. That will avoid the problem of this case of this rabbinic hefker. But meisvei, the Gemara asks on Rish Lakish. Rish Lakish had said the whole brisa is like Rabbi Yossi. The Gemara asks from the following brisa, and this will address some of the halachas that we were mentioning about hefker. Hamafker is karma. Someone makes his vineyard hefker. Now, the next morning, so he goes and he starts harvesting this hefker vineyard. So the halach is chayiv. He's still going to be obligated beperet, which are these the little ones, or these clusters that are don't have such big clusters. These are the matnas aniyim, ubeshikra and the bundles, ubepeya and the corner of the field. In other words, it's just like a regular field that he has. Because even though hefker is pater from all these things, as the Gemara says in general Daf Shabbos Daf Samach Chesed Alaf, that only if it's nishmar, which excludes hefker, even so, since all these things in the Torah say an extra word taziv, that you should leave it, so he's going to be obligated in all these things when he goes back and goes and takes possession of it, as the Gemara says in Baba Kama Daf Tzadi Dal Alaf. So you can be chayiv in all these matnas on him, but upater mina meiser. But you're going to be pater from meiser. Why? Why pater from meiser? Because it doesn't say by meiser an extra word taziv. So it doesn't make a difference him. It doesn't make a difference someone else. If they go in the bizaycha from him, it's going to be pater. That's the reason why meiser is different from all the other matnas aniyim. Okay, but ask the Gemara as follows. Bishleim le'ula, we understand according to Ula that the Rabbanon Ketani law that he had mentioned that who's the Tana of Mishnah is the Rabbanon. Uderaisa Ketani law, and he explained it on the biblical halacha. In other words, that even though the Rabbanu were misakin, that within 3 days you could back out, and if that's the case, that when he is zoich in it, he's going to be obligated in meiser midrabanan. Even so, this brisa makes sense according to them, because although the brisa is saying that by meiser you're going to be pater, yeah. That's biblically, but rabbinically, and the Chanami, that you're going to be chayiv. But Rish Lakish, according to Rish Lakish, did he explain the whole brisa like Rabbi Yossi? So, how are you going to explain this brisa according to him? Why? Because according to Rabbi Yossi, since he says that someone that's mafker could back out, make halacha until it comes to the rishus of someone else is being zeichened. So when this guy gets up in the morning and he starts harvesting, Amai potter min meiser. Why is he potter from meiser? Because since he's not being specific that he's being zeicha from hefker, I think that's the point that we had answered on that question with the Rabban and Rabbi Yossi, that idea. So you're going to say that, okay, it's just backing out. So it comes out that he's harvesting from his own and not from hefker. Because although that he holds for Rabbi Yossi that he also could be zeicha from teres hefker, for when he's mafkered himself, that's only when he's explicit. But when he harvests its stam, since he could back out, it would seem like, yeah, he's backing out and he's harvesting from his own. So why would you be pater from meiser? It's back your regular field. It's like it was never hefker in the first place, according to Rabbi Yossi. So Amalach or Lakish would tell you, Ki amri ana, when do I say my teaching was Rabbi Yasi? This brisa is Rabbanhi. In other words, although you're right, the other brisa I explained, Kulik Rabbi Yasi, obviously this brisa is going like Rabbanan, who they say in the Mishnah that right away, immediately, it's going to be Hafker, even though it didn't yet come to the Rishus B'Zeicha, and therefore you're going to be Pater because it's Hafker. And you're right, and this is not like Rabbi Yasi. So it's not going to be difficulty on Rish Lakish because this brisa is obviously not like Rabbi Yasi, like Rabban. Take it to any time. Those things.